Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It is Black Girls Get Eating Disorders 2. We're talking particularly about anorexia. So I want to say thank you for my first subscriber. I've got one subscriber and I'm very grateful. And also I want to apologize. This is a bit of housekeeping first for the first videos that I push out. The sound quality, oh my god, it was shite. I'm so sorry. I think I was recording using the my plugged in microphone or my headphones, and I think I was talking incredibly, I must have been talking quite low. And therefore through the headphones it just came out really low, and I just thought it was because I was listening to editing it at low volume, but like clearly that was not the case, and it just sounds incredibly muffled, like I was doing the video in somebody's locked basement. I assure you that was not what was happening, but I just want to apologize for that. I'm going to try now to have like regular volumed sounding videos. Okay, so welcome back, and today's video I'm just going to do a brief overview of, I know that you can get this out there like anywhere, but like it is my channel, and I want it to be as rounded as possible, so you can find all sorts of information relating I guess here to anorexia nervosa. It is through the lens of my experience, but we still do need to have some basic diagnostics, etc., as to what it is. What is anorexia nervosa? What is it defined as? So that is what we're going to be talking about. It's not going to be very long. I don't want it to be. I want it to be quite a quick bite one, and then no pun intended. Sorry. And then in another video we'll talk about another topic, obviously. Okay, so I went on to the Beat website, and for those of you in the UK, you will know, if you've googled it, it is one of the leading charities for eating disorders in the UK, or eating disorders I should say, not just anorexia nervosa. And it is like, it's quite smart, beat, so it's like beat it, like you can go like, I'm gonna beat this, but it's like beat with the eat, so it's like there's a pun in there. Okay, so or you would recognize I do talk about things in a very light tone. I might have a light-hearted in sometimes, or my tone might sound light, but the subject matter is most definitely not. But it is whatever gets you through. Okay, and there's no point, I don't want to be the one. If you want to get information in a serious doctor clinical way, you can go somewhere else for that, because you're not going to get that here. But we will be talking about things seriously because it's a serious topic, but we don't need to be depressing about it, do we? Like, no. So like I said, I went into Beat. So for those you guys in America, I don't know what the alternative is, but I think the information itself, in terms of the basics, it's very much across the board. Maybe there may be slightly different diagnostics in terms of criteria for hospital admission, etc., but that could be in another video, so that's not very much important now. So what is anorexia nervosa? So first of all, let me just go into the actual meaning of the word to break it down, so that you can get an idea of basically what exactly the disorder entails on a surface level. So the word anorexia nervosa, as you can see, it's spelt ANOREXIA NERVOSA. And it means, anorexia itself, the word means loss of appetite, and it's from ancient Greek, so it's Latin. And Latin, it's from ancient Greek, and the A and the N means without, and orexis in Greek means appetite, or the desire for appetite. So altogether it's like without appetite, loss of appetite. And Latin is what I meant to say before, sorry, for nervosa is nervous. So it's like loss of appetite. So it's like the nervousness around the loss of appetite. And according to Wiki, it says an eating disorder is characterized by self-starvation due to an irrational fear of gaining weight. So that's what it says for anorexia nervosa there, but I want to read the beat. What is anorexia nervosa itself? So we've got basis of the word itself, so you can get an idea of what it entails. So anorexia nervosa is all just anorexia for short, or if you've read articles or people, sometimes you might hear them talk about, I have Anna, Anna in my life, or these sorts, or you might have heard those sorts of sites that were banned, like this, or My Pro Anna, but the Anna itself is a derivative of anorexia. It's just kind of a shortened name. So anorexia is a serious mental illness where people are of low weight. This is according to Beat, by the way. They're of incredibly low weight due to limiting their energy intake, aka food. It can affect anyone of any age, gender, or background. This is like, sorry, my paper's going everywhere. As well as restricting the amount of food eaten, they may do lots of exercise to get rid of food eaten. Some people with anorexia may experience cycles of binging, meaning eating large amounts of food at once, and then purging. And that's either in the form of induced vomiting, the use of diuretics such as laxatives, water pills, diet pills, just anything that is attempting to purge what has been ingested, if that's clear enough to you. The way sufferers see themselves is often at odds with how others see them. They often have a distorted image of themselves and think they are larger than they really are. They experience a deep fear of gaining weight and will usually challenge the idea that they should. Sometimes someone's symptoms may not exactly match all the criteria a doctor checks for to diagnose anorexia. For example, they may remain at a weight considered, quotes, normal for their age, sex, and expected development. Depending on the exact symptoms, they may be diagnosed with atypical anorexia or another form of a specified feeding or eating disorder. So they said OSFED here, or you can have the other abbreviation is EDNOS, so eating disorder not otherwise diagnosed. This is just as serious and can develop both into or from anorexia. It's just as important that people suffering with OSFED get treatment as quickly as possible. The behaviour associated with anorexia can contribute to a feeling of control. Many people who have spoken to us about their anorexia have said they felt they could control what they ate and their body weight, when they didn't feel they could control other aspects of their lives. There are many different reasons that someone might develop anorexia, but it's important to remember that eating disorders are often not about food itself. They are a mental illness, and treatment should address the underlying thoughts and feelings that cause that behaviour. And I'm going to add on to that, as opposed to just thinking that if I feed this person up and get them to an okay weight, that it's gone away. That means that they don't have anorexia anymore. Wrong. It is a mental illness. It is of the mind. It is of cognition. It's of your cognitive functions. It is of the mind. Okay, the low weight, it's a physical symptom. It's an outward showing symptom physically of an inward mental problem. And let me rephrase that, because that makes it sound quite negative. It's a physical, so when you see people who have anorexia and they're of a very low weight, the low weight is a symptom of the actual, whatever the root cause is for that person. It's barely ever about, I just want to look skinny, therefore I have anorexia. Okay, people that think that are seriously misguided. I don't hold any judgment towards people that think that, because that is these are the kind of misconceptions that the public have. There are many stereotypes about anorexia. Actually, I'll do a video on that. There are many stereotypes about anorexia and why people get anorexia. People throw the word around like, oh my god, they're so skinny, they look anorexic, without really thinking about what the word means and what people that actually do have, or who do have anorexia nervosa actually go through. It is a debilitating mental illness that exhibits usually, you know, as it did say in the article, that you can be at a normal weight. And that's another video in itself, because that in itself can be even more distressing, not because you are not as thin, air quotes, as others, but for the simple fact that your eating disorder may go unnoticed, unchecked, even so much as to say unbelieved by professionals, by parents, by friends, because they think that to be an anorexic person, you must look like a garden rake, and you must basically look like a science room skeleton in order to have it. And that is why I am doing videos like this, because it's important to really I want to scrap the misconceptions and certain stereotypes, because there are people out there that are suffering in silence, or suffering full stop, because nobody's believing them. And people, as we know, it is the anorexia nervosa has the highest rate of death out of any of the mental illnesses, simply because of the nature, I guess, of what the body does indeed go through. And it is also the mind. It's incredibly, it could be very, it's like can't even explain it, like a trap, to the point where, you know, people can even decide to take their own lives. But I don't really want to go down that road, because I'm not sure on statistics or anything. I'm just imagining from things and people that I know and stories that I've heard firsthand. So I just want to get that across there. Okay. So is it serious? Well, I kind of just said, you know, is it serious? Yes. In one word, yes. I just said it is the highest, it has the highest rate of mortality amongst all of the, pretty much all of the mental illnesses there, purely, you know, because of what I said. But here it says anorexia can cause severe physical problems because of the effects of the starvation on the body. It can lead to a loss of muscle strength and reduced bone strength. People whose periods previously started may find that they stop their periods. They may also find that their sex drive decreases. The illness can affect people's relationships with family and friends, causing them to withdraw. It can have an impact on their work or education. As with others eating disorders, it can also be associated with depression, low self-esteem, alcohol misuse, and self-harm. The seriousness of the physical and emotional consequences of the condition is not often acknowledged or recognised. Exactly. And sufferers often do not seek help. They may go at great length to hide their behaviour from family and friends, and sometimes might not realise that they're ill. And that really further supports the fact, and this is 100% true, that it is not about the thin body wanting to look like that. All right, it may start somewhat because of like what's perpetuated in the media or seen as desirable, particularly in the Western world, wanting to emulate that because of the believed benefits that go along with it. But when you develop the eating disorder, all right, it usually becomes about something else. You get taken over by it, essentially. And the reasoning for wanting to emulate what is seen as physically desirable is often there is a nub in there, as well as there are very many different reasons why people develop eating disorders. But I'm saying, if it was based on, because, you know, everybody says that, you know, being thin or is desirable, or slim and model like, whatever, there's obviously a pathology there in the mind, or there's a susceptibility. And it's like, in terms of low self-esteem, why is it you've got low self-esteem? Why do you feel the need, or why do you feel? So it's interesting to look at, like, you know, why, like, and this is where I really want to get into the meat and potatoes of videos about social you know, ideals and this and all of that, like, because it does play a part. It's not the reason for it, like, so that's why when it does play a part. Let's just leave it there for now. But it's looking more at that, because there's obviously a reasoning why you're like thinking, well, yes, this is what I must be. There must be something, the reasoning, maybe it is low self-esteem, low self-worth. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I'm just saying that there's always a base reason that will make you then feel the desire to perhaps emulate, lose weight, to be slimmer. And then usually when it grips, it's a different ball game. You are not even really looking at that model or that reasoning in the first place, because now Anna has taken a hold, if you see what I mean. All right. And it's about working out what that is all about. And that, I'm not going to lie, it's not an easy journey. All right. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon to kind of sometimes get over that. But I will say that it is very much true that the earlier it is spotted, and if you have intervention quickly, I firmly believe that the recovery has a higher chance of a full recovery. Okay, in terms of when people say full recovery, it's like where you may never, you can live a fuller life, and you don't, it's like perhaps there, the thoughts of the eating disorder are in the past. Like your eating is not affected anymore. You don't have any anxiety about it. I can guess I can say, like, and maybe this is different for people, but I'm just going to give this basic analogy. When you're maybe on a diet for the first time, when you're like on a diet and you might be going along with it and you're doing really well and you're losing the weight, but eventually you stop or you fall off after a while, and you just like, I just want to eat again. And then you start eating again, and maybe you gain the weight back, maybe you don't. You probably will gain a bit back, but you're not in the mind frame of being like feeling so guilty for eating the food that you've been eating, because you're kind of enjoying it again, because you kind of really, really missed it. So after a period of time, even if you gain weight and you're like, oh, I wish I could lose a bit, you are not trapped in this thought pattern of, I cannot eat that, or if something is put in your way, you are worrying or obsessing or counting every calories and thinking this and this and this and this. And it kind of fades away. That's kind of like what I would call, I mean, it's sad to say, it's ironic, but normalized, okay? Whereas, and recovery. So it's kind of gone, and I think earlier on, if it was captured very early, I think there's a higher chance of, hopefully, especially if you're young, that kind of fading into the background. Of course, we'll still obviously have our body image issues and this and this and this, and this is where things like, what we're seeing in societal magazines might make us think, oh, but it's not something that is going to be debilitating and essentially halt your life. Okay, it doesn't become all about that in recovery. So, but the longer, so not in that full, that's what I meant by having a recovery like earlier. Whereas the longer it is there, the more ingrained your eating disorder becomes in your mind, and it becomes very difficult to untangle yourself from it and to switch those thoughts off, so to speak. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, that's all I was saying about the time frame, So let me see. This video is actually becoming longer than I wanted it to become. I'm apologizing. I'm going to stop in a minute, and I'll put any more information in. I'll put information in another video. In fact, I think what I'll do is, I said that I was going to talk about signs of anorexia and stuff. I'm going to leave that for another video so that this doesn't become too long, because I think there's some good bits in here, but I don't want it to be too long. So the next video would be about signs of anorexia, and we'll also talk about the symptoms. Do you recognize these symptoms? And in that video, we'll also talk about disordered eating versus eating disorder. All right. So let's see. Do I want to add anything else to this video before I finish? So yeah, it is serious, and this in relation to the part where I just said this is what I want to say actually here, to relate it back to the nature of my channel, to be a help for those like, black girls, minority girls, or boys, I should say, when it says that the seriousness of the physical and emotional consequences of the condition is often not acknowledged or recognized, and sufferers often do not seek help. So this is what I was the bit that I would like to relate to the channel, because often I find anorexia is still very much have a lot of misconceptions. Okay, people very much still consider it, air quotes, the white girl middle class disease. That's so therefore that's who it affects. That's it's a very sort of like, I don't know, in a silly way, you know, it's an affluent disease. People who have, you know, they say, you know, people who have enough time on their hands or enough of a luxurious life, so to speak, to be able to, you know, indulge in things such as losing weight to be thin to look good. And that's another crappy misconception, obviously, because we know that's not true, because it is not true. There are many facets to it, and that side, that what I just said, is the section where a lot of people of minority, and I'm going to say that I'm not so much as including, perhaps, actually I don't know, because it's not my experience, so I can only go by my experience, but I think that people will be more willing, or not willing, more open-minded, so to speak, in professions, to think, to imagine that an Asian person, or, you know, a European, non-white, but of European heritage. How am I saying non-white but of European? What do I mean? You know, maybe like Latino, or maybe like Chinese, or maybe like Indian, Asian, you know, girl, I'm more willing to see, maybe that's, and they've got anorexia, as opposed to maybe a black girl. And that's because no doubt of the, you know, the initial thoughts of who gets anorexia, you know, who, the type of the background, the situations in that sense. And culturally, people of black heritage or black girls considered, they would never be considered, because it's that thing of, you know, we're very much, Western ideals are like white, thin, tall, blonde women. If imagined, if you are a black woman, you would not want to look like that, because you can't look like that. And it's not about looking physically like that, but the size of the body, or whatever it is, you know. In culturally, in black culture, we, you know, it's the breasts, the bottom, you know, having a large bum, having wide thigh, you know, or thick thighs. A small waist is incredibly desirable, you know, especially now when you have people like Beyonce, you know, J-Lo back in the day. Now we've got flipping Kim K, whose body, her body is not even her real body, but whatever, she's still in that category. That is what is the believed desirability, what is believed that is looked at, what is believed is what all black girls want to aspire to assimilate. You know, that is what it is. Rap videos, you know, it's kind of considered that's what it is. And that might be in itself a stereotype, because there's stereotypes in every culture and in everything. And so even among black people themselves, I should say, that's the, you know, they don't expect that to happen. And so therefore, I'm going as far as to say that the doctors, the medical profession, they still themselves are, some, not all, are behind. Because imagine this: if you grow up and you've got a set of beliefs, and you think this and this and this, and you see this and this, and you're watching MTV with your friends, you know, you've got your multicultural friends, but you're seeing it and you're like, you know, that's what, you know, my friend wants to look like, she's got looks like this, or you know, your environment, how you're socialized. You think, well, okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. And they don't, you know, she doesn't want to be skinny like me, or she doesn't want to look like this. You kind of, and it's not even a racist thing. So please, people, don't even bother. But it's just a growing, personalized type thing. Now, imagine if said person becomes and decides to go into the medical profession and wants to be a GP. All right. Now, when you become a doctor, this is what the thing, the misconception as well, of like, you know, people believing that doctors are these gods and stuff. No, they're flesh and bone. All right. They do the forward tumble roly-poly out of their mother's vagina, the same way that everybody else does, all right? And they go into a profession that just so happens to be one that means people need to go to them for help. because it's help about the body and stuff. And obviously we know that, you know, when you need medical help, it's all about to stay alive almost, because it's the body. They're very held obviously in a very sort of like high regard, and they're definitely seen as a very respected members of society, and they do a good job, most of them. Okay, but at the end of the day, they're still just humans, are just regular people, and they go and they do their job. And while you might be amazing at your job and you might be get niche and get specialist as a basic GP, if you had no experience of eating disorders, you have no reason, apart from the fact that maybe you should learn. But I'm saying that you cannot initially blame somebody for, they will bring their own personal life experiences into diagnoses. So this said person who had these friends and was growing up like this, if a black girl presents herself in the office and she's maybe losing weight, or she's lost weight and she's she's being secretive about the fact maybe that she has an eating disorder, maybe she doesn't realize she has one, and she's going in there maybe for something else, but the doctor asks her the general questions, how do you eat and this, but you can see there's been a weight loss. This doctor's mind might not necessarily go to the fact you may have an eating disorder. You maybe have the beginning signs. If not, you may have already developed anorexia nervosa, all right, because of preconceived ideas already from your own personal life and perhaps what you're seeing in the media. So therefore, this is why it's really kind of important, I guess, for me to do and to talk about my experiences. Obviously, being somebody who does suffer, I often oscillate between saying does suffer and has had, because it's like I don't want that to be my identity, but I can't deny that I have had, that I do have and have been diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. It is just fact, okay? And so therefore, it's for videos like this because it is easy to see, I said, why and how people can slip through the net at the first base, so to speak. The first port of call is usually your GP, where things get picked up, and then that's when the ball starts rolling. But if it's not being picked up at the GP and you are from a home who doesn't really recognize, some people, like, let me tell you, my mum she'd heard of it, but she didn't really know what it was about. And other people that I came to know afterwards that really, found out, or when you hear on the television, they're like, why would you not want to eat? It's like not understood in a culture that really is big on food and using food in all celebrations. And like I just said, culturally, what's considered desirable in terms of body shapes, it is just unheard of. And I know this might sound a stereotype, but to come from a continent where we're constantly bombarded of images on the television that there is a lack of food, it makes people think, well, what, like, there's a lack of food, surely you would want to eat food. Like, a lack of food is seen as poor, poverty-stricken, people can't afford food, third world countries. You have food, eat it. It's so different. It's so interesting, because if you go back in time, we can see in terms of just regular society how fads, I should say, and fashions and body sizes have changed. Back in the centuries back, if we go back to the 1700s, the 1500s, the rich were seen as rich, and they exhibited their wealth via their clothes and via the fact that they could afford to eat, they could afford to sustain themselves. Being fat was seen as, you have money, you have wealth, because you can afford food to eat and to sustain and to fill your body. The thin, scrawny, skinny, malnourished, or just underweight looking people were the poor people. They couldn't afford food. They had to work on the land. They had to work. They did not have the luxury of affording food. So being thin was seen as something that was very much associated with poverty, okay, in the same way that being seen as chubby, so to speak, was associated with wealth and a good life, in the same way that in the 1700s, in 1700s, you know, all around, I guess, the times of slavery and stuff. It was so in vogue for people to, particularly in France, to powder their faces white, because it showed that they didn't need to be out in the sun. Those that were out in the sun were like the slaves or the workers, and they caught the rays of the sun and they were darker. So to be having a white powdered face, it showed that you had money. You didn't need to work. You were in a house. Do you see what I mean? Very much so. We came to the 20th century, and then we see it started to flip. All right, we come to the 1920s. It was very in vogue for women to have very boyish figures. All right, because now the tides were starting to turn. Although we did go into the 50s, where it was seen as very voluptuous, you know, the small waist, the breasts and the hips. Then we hit the 60s, and from the 60s onwards, it's very much been the same as what we're seeing now, except there's been a very slight difference in maybe the past decade or two. But it very much was of the mindset now that if you have money, you have the luxury to, you know, streamline your body. Being healthy became fashionable. Having an athleticized, toned figure became fashionable. Therefore, the more money you had, the more you could spend on trying to attain such an athletic figure. It showed wealth. It showed culture. It showed that you had, that you had broadened horizons, so to speak. You know, it was very desirable, all right. And being fat or being larger, so to speak, was seen as very low class. It was seen as very, you know, once again now for those who didn't have as much money. And so suddenly, you know, this junk food era that we've come into, and the easily accessibility, and people are just eating, and everybody can afford it. It almost flips to the point where now those that have money, you might be able to, it's weird. It's like it was showing restraint. It shows restraint. If everybody can just eat, because you can afford it, and the masses, so to speak, can, if you've got money, the fact you can afford it, but you can still restrain yourself, therefore attaining this is seen as desirable. And that's what's kind of been pushed out. Do you see what I mean? There's so much underlying stuff to it. But therefore, if we go back to our GP, so I'm going off on one here, we can see that the GP and the family, culturally and culture, we can see how people start to slip through the net. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very, very easy. Hopefully now these days it's becoming more prevalent. Sadly, eating disorders maybe are more prevalent, maybe because of social media. Who knows? All these things we'll explore. But it's being seen as, the more, I guess, it's in the media, the more people are understanding that it's colourless, it's genderless, it's sexless. You know what I mean? And those are the things that we could talk about more. But for this video, which has gone way over, I just wanted to talk about what is anorexia. And I think that is enough. We are on 34 minutes. Oh my God. But I'll leave it there. And I hope this was of use to people and the information was good. Please click like. Give me a thumbs up. Sorry, I'm like thinking about Instagram. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We'll be doing more videos, and please feel free to put requests in if there's information that you want to know about. And I will see you in my next video. So until then, take care of yourself. Bye.